Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagoshnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, what the hell happened with Denver's coach at the end of that game?
I have no idea. Like, because they had like a minute left, right? And they let the clock run down to get to 20 seconds before they call the timeout to kick the field goal. So for people that aren't familiar, they're driving, downfield. They're down by 1 point, 2 points, 1 point, and Russell Wilson leading the Denver Broncos against the Seattle Seahawks gets to the 40 something. It ends up being a 64-yard field goal attempt. It fails to convert on 3rd and 5, and they just let the clock go from a minute down to 20 seconds. And they have all 3 timeouts. They never call the timeout except right before they would have incurred the delay of game penalty. And then they bring up Brandon McManus for a 64-yard field goal. He sets up to kick. He kicks. Seattle calls a timeout right before they kick. He misses that kick. And that's not a sign to the Denver Broncos that maybe, the 64-yard kick is unlikely. But they line him up again to kick, and he kicks and he misses it. And so Seattle now has the ball at basically at the edge of midfield, and the Broncos have 2 timeouts left. Call both of them, by the way, as Seattle kneels out, as if they could.
I love how petty that was.
Yeah, it's just wild. But yeah, it's just so bad. And okay, so here's the thing. First of all, just try to convert the 4th and 5. The odds of converting a 4th and 5 for an average offense, which I think that with Russell Wilson, your odds are just a little bit higher. But the odds on average are about 45%, at least over the last 5 years. They don't try to do it. The odds of kicking a 60-plus yard field goal are under 20%. This is not a close decision to me. And also, so you have all 3 timeouts. You could, if you're going to kick it, if you're committed to kicking it, you could rush the field goal unit out there, attempt the kick. Seattle probably calls the timeout, right? And so you preserve the time and your kicker doesn't have to actually be rushed. But even if not, you end up kicking. There's now 40 seconds left, but you have all 3 timeouts so you could get the ball back, right? That's the thing, is they had all 3 timeouts and they wasted one of them so they could get the 20 seconds left of the field goal attempt to 64 yards, but they never had a consideration for what happens if you miss. They were just yeah, obviously you would lose. And so, yeah, you'd set up a situation where you have to recover a punt or return a punt with 13 seconds left, right? It's not ideal, but it's better. There was no good way to kick it, but this was the worst way to kick it, right?
The only thing that this ending was missing was, I forget which coach it was, but he would bull rush whenever there was a kneel down.
Greg Schiano.
Yeah, that's what it was missing here. Thank you, Greg Schiano. Yeah. You're just missing a Greg Schiano style bull rush when the kneel down happened.
Yeah.
There's your reason for calling the timeout. What if we get that?
Yeah, and they didn't. They were that would be unsportsmanlike. So you're just waiting for them to fumble and then act because they're just going to get the ball then, right? There's no the point of victory formation only exists to prevent fumble recoveries by the defense. It's to prevent, what was it when Herm Edwards did it, the Music City Miracle or something? It's to prevent those things where you run out the clock by literally running the ball and you fumble the ball, right? It's to prevent that. It's just to have your best fumble recoverers, right, surrounding the center snap exchange and then kneeling. That is the lowest probability scenario you could possibly imagine for getting back into the game.
Just amazing to watch. As somebody who enjoys terrible coaching and terrible coaching decisions, I was in heaven. As someone who appreciates the art of the missed field goal, I was also in heaven. This was perfect. No notes from me as far as Hell League stuff. Great. Just rampant stupidity. And I think it's official. Geno Smith never has to buy a drink in the city of Seattle ever again. You're good.
I feel like you probably have to finish out that season, but that helped a lot. That helped a lot.
The odds of him having to pay drastically went down. How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, well, we're going to get into this episode here in just a moment. Again, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to donate, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go over to patreon.com/Norse Code and access the bonus episodes. You can go over to there and get access to the Discord and a number of other cool things we do over there. So check that out, patreon.com/Norse Code. Tim Horsberg is our special patron of the week. Thank you so much for donating over there. Again, all this just keeps the lights on, helps keep the Loch Ness Monster at bay, and allows us to do cool things like the London trip, which we'll talk about just real quick. The live episode for the London trip is happening after the Saints game, October 2nd over at Antwerp Arms. Again, that's October 2nd after the game at Antwerp Arms. It's about 2 blocks from the stadium. Just walk over there, head over, we'll be there. We've got a couple speakers, we'll be ready to go. So check that out. Again, Antwerp Arms on October 2nd. This is not a ticketed event. You don't need tickets to go into the bar. We will be over there a little bit after the game. So but there are no tickets because we've had a question about that. So thank you so much. PayPal.me/Norse Code works as well if you'd like to donate to the show. And you can also go to norsecode.threadless.com and you can go and buy Luke Braun an Aurith sweater. Luke Braun needs one, and you can get him one over at norsecode.threadless.com. I enjoyed you wearing the shirt on the show today. It was a power move, to say the least.
Yeah, well, I just figured, this is probably the closest thing to Christmas that Vikings fans will feel until literally Christmas.
Yeah.
And I needed to celebrate that in the spirit of it, and so. The only visual medium that I'm going to be appearing in this week, as far as I know. Who knows, right? Maybe I'm going to be on the news for something not football related. So I decided to wear the shirt.
I appreciated that. It really does scream the reason for the season. And so that's where we're at. Thank you guys so much for listening. Let's get into the game because the Vikings won. A decisive victory against Green Bay. I'd say there was never a doubt, but there was about 2 seconds there where an NDSU receiver was about to make Arif look foolish. But luckily, that's not the reality we live in.
Yeah, and it never was going to be, right? Like inherently. Yeah. So well, that was fated.
Before we start, let's let you have a victory lap on how they use CJ Ham.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean... Yeah, it would be unsportsmanlike for me to do that. So here I am doing it. The piece I wrote on CJ Ham, how they're going to use CJ Ham, was a piece that explored kind of what the offense would look like in the context of the philosophy of the Kevin O'Connell and the Rams version of the West Coast, which was to be very flexible, multiple, and run a bunch of the same plays out of different formations. And the best way that you can evaluate that is not to look at receivers because sometimes, you can kind of miss a lot of detail, but to see it when a sore thumb, historically speaking, does some unusual things like a fullback, right? Like CJ Ham being out wide as a lead blocker on a toss play or just lining up out wide in general is somewhat unusual, right? And so seeing him I predicted that was going to happen in the piece. I said, this is one way to do it. You could have him in bunch or you could have him out wide. You could be the point on bunch. And if he's the point on bunch, you can have him, block for screens. If he's out wide, he can block on top. And so that's exactly what happened. They lined up out wide. They tossed to his side. He's the lead blocker. They gained 6 yards, I think, on that run. Right. So I was right. And you should pay me. Not you, James.
Well,
but everyone who listens to this.
Okay, well, I'm glad that this isn't going to your head in any way, shape, or form.
If you Venmo'd me, that'd be cool too. But
see, the last time I sent you a payment for something, you freaked out. So let's move past that.
I was losing money. That makes sense.
Well, it looked like you were, except you were gaining it because that's how that works. So. Let's get before actually that I just enjoyed the screenshot Luke sent of CJ Ham getting double teamed. Really? Like, listen, I'm on record.
You got to neutralize the biggest threat they have.
The ham attack. Again, I've said this phrase before, but as the biggest ham supporter outside of the pork industry, I just have to say that you probably have your priorities wrong if you're not doubling, say, Justin Jefferson, and instead are doubling Captain Ham. That may explain a number of the problems that the Packers had in defensive coverage, and let's talk about that, because Justin Jefferson was set up. If this were a game where the Packers offense was not a liability, this seemed like the sort of game that Justin Jefferson could have put up 250 yards without trying. He was everywhere, and the Packers seemingly did nothing to stop him.
Yeah, by the end of the first half, he had like 160 odd yards, so it very much felt like, like 250 yards was on the table, and if the Packers had been able to keep pace, obviously the Vikings would have thrown the ball a little bit more, and we would have seen more go Justin Jefferson's way. As it was, 184 yards, not a bad day showing. Probably could, I guess the ceiling would have been 189 plus the third touchdown, but I think no one's upset, right? Like, oh no, he didn't touch his second toe down on the end zone shot. Whatever will we do with Justin Jefferson, the world's most mediocre receiver?
All those
that's going to get clipped.
All those people with all those people with the that drafted him or weren't happy with their 30 points in fantasy. They were hoping for 45.
Yeah, if you lost because you didn't get that Justin Jefferson touchdown, that's on you, buddy. You have him on your team and you couldn't win? Rough.
What an amazing day for him. What a good start. He is. You look at the NFC North, and even before this game, nobody could touch him as far as being a wide receiver. Is there a defender in the NFC North that can even hold a candle to him?
I don't know that we are at a point where there is a cornerback of that caliber right now. Like, some years I think Jalen Ramsey could have been that guy. Obviously, you go back to, like, say, a Richard Sherman or in his prime Patrick Peterson, or even further back to like a Darrelle Revis. Yeah, I think you could have. I think that in his prime Darrelle Revis, actually, that would have been a really fun one to watch. And I don't know, maybe I would have put my money on 2009 Revis, but right now I don't think there's like one defender that you can just man up against Jefferson and say, hey, we're good. We're going to limit you to like 35 yards or whatever. Like, I just don't think that's possible in the modern NFL.
He was all over the place. And especially the one play where it looked like the safety decided, it looked like the safety was playing spy, decided to go after Kirk because it looked like Kirk was going to scramble. And right there was Justin Jefferson cutting across. No one within 20 yards of him.
So that one's kind of funny. Because is this the play where I'm getting all kinds of guff on Twitter about?
The awkward as hell throw? Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to like make my thoughts clear on this. I don't like think that this play is all that important when it comes to evaluating Cousins' performance one way or the other. He had like a bunch of other plays. He had like 34 other throws, I think. So it's like weird how much people focus on, like, first of all, I just want to say, like, in-game tweets, like, just like taken out of the ecosystem of a live tweeting game experience is just like the worst when people like interact with them. This reminds me of like the work in progress stuff from 3 years ago, where like Cousins was making a couple of mistakes and it just wasn't working in the opening game that he was with the Vikings. And I was like, yeah, I guess it's a work in progress. I mean, I was being a little snarkier than that. Like, I'm not going to pretend that I was just being kind of neutral about it. But like, it looks like it's a work in progress. And people got like up in arms 2 quarters later, because I think he had a great fourth quarter in that game, about that tweet, as if that tweet was still relevant, 2 additional quarters into the game. This one is like a little bit different because it describes my opinion on a throw that afterwards, people have been breaking down and stuff like that. But I, normally I would just say, yeah, I was wrong at the time and, I changed my mind. But honestly, I don't really think I was wrong about that throw. It was just like, hey, he handed it off to the wrong side on the play action fake. So that was kind of one error. He did a great job climbing up in the pocket. I'm not going to deny that. That was true. And he heaved it, off platform deep downfield, and it was an inaccurate ball. And when I was watching from the stadium with my binoculars tracking the ball was wobbly. I don't know that like the 720p all 22 of that ball really records that, but what I watched, it was very clearly kind of a wobbly pass that was rainbowing, and it was off the trajectory it needed to be to kind of maximize yardage. And Jefferson adjusted extremely well to it. I mean, it's kind of one of the things that makes him such an excellent receiver. He's got incredible ball tracking and adjustment. It's like a reverse Cordero Patterson. And he tracked down the ball and was able to turn it into like a 60-plus yard gain. It was incredible, right? And the thing is, I don't think Cousins made a bad play. I think Jefferson made a great play, right? I think, Cousins was actually, improvisationally speaking, much better in this game than he was in most games. His like sack to pressure ratio was like 7%. That's incredible. That's fantastic. It's not going to sustain itself, but in terms of, praising someone's performance in one game, yeah, that's killer job by him, especially because a lot of that pressure was, at the middle, right? He did a good job improvising, and that's an example of him improvising. That doesn't mean the throw was accurate, right? Like he could have had a good play. That doesn't make the throw accurate. He throws to the correct general area of the field, but Jefferson has to chase it down, right? Whereas if he throws it in stride to Jefferson, then that's a more accurate ball. Now, the thing is, I'm asking him in this context to do something extraordinarily difficult, which is throw on the run, off platform. Most quarterbacks, when they throw on the run, are running laterally, and so there is kind of a footwork that quarterbacks get used to for that. This kind of throw upfield is really difficult, right? And so I'm not saying that he did a bad job because that throw was inaccurate. I'm saying the throw was inaccurate. That's all I'm saying. He did a good job, and it's just funny that a bunch of things went wrong in the play. It ended up being a fantastic gain for 60 yards. That's all I'm saying. And so, like, a lot of people are like really mad at this, especially there's like a section of Vikings Twitter that like are particularly motivated, it seems like, to kind of dislike what I have to say. And I get it. I mean, the way the tweet is written, it looks like a criticism of Cousins, but it was a good play. It's a great play from Jefferson is really more what it is. But Jefferson had to change his approach where he was running in order to chase after the ball instead of having the ball come to him in stride. And like, that's the difference between a phenomenal throw and a good throw. And I don't know, good throw maybe is wrong. Good play is maybe accurate. But like, yeah. So, but yeah, and there were a couple of them, like the one that was really high to Jefferson later on that went deep downfield. That one was like fun to watch again.
The Keenum special. It looked like a Case Keenum throw.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is so in the press box we were talking about this. Me and John Krasinski were talking about this because it was like so that throw plus the other one to Jefferson in the end zone that turned out not to be a touchdown. He can't see anything. And so he knows he has good receivers and he throws to where they're probably going to be. And I was like, oh yeah, like Case Keenum did like every game, right? Like exactly. That's a Keenum throw, right? Which this is like, especially me and John have for like the past several years been like, look, if you could combine the strengths of Case Keenum and the strengths of Kirk Cousins, you would have an absolutely dominant quarterback, right? Like somebody who knows when and how to trust the receivers, that plays with a little bit of chutzpah. I'm trying not to get like iTunes demonetized here. Plays like Mike Zimmer likes to see Case Keenum play with a set of brass ones. But also like has unerring accuracy, can play really well within a system, can play really well on timing routes, knows how to do play action, but also can just get out of pressure and can throw with like hands in his face where he can't see. He just kind of has an understanding of where the receivers probably should be. And we saw a little bit of that in this game. So yeah, I mean, like it was a pretty good game for Kirk Cousins. It was a insane game for Justin Jefferson. Great game for Harrison Phillips. Fantastic game for Harrison Smith. It was a pretty good game for Kirk Cousins. Not a good game for Irv Smith, who only had 19 snaps, right? If we're going to rank Kirk Cousins among the Vikings players in that game, he's clearly in the top half, especially considering what was happening up the middle. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like the good Kirk Cousins. We don't have to make more of it than it is.
Just watching that throw, just live, my only thought was, you don't see Cousins leave his feet often.
Yeah.
He doesn't leave the ground off. And I was like, that's an odd, oh my God, it's going to work. Like, it was just.
Right, yeah. And that was like the spirit of the tweet. Honestly, It was like, this is weird. There's like a bunch of things are going wrong, and holy crap! Which again, like Case Keenum, like a bunch of things are going wrong. Oh my God, it worked! Fantastic! That's kind of funny. The spirit of the tweet was that it was like funny that all of this worked out.
Yeah,
right? It wasn't like Kirk Cousins was like, oh, I can't believe he did this, because a lot of people are now like, oh, these analysts want Kirk Cousins to improvise, and when he does, they get mad. It's like, no, it was funny. Look at him. Look at him go.
It's the visual equivalent of watching Kirk Cousins swear.
Yeah, right. Which, by the way, happened at training camp this year.
It was
a whole new Kirk Cousins. Also 2-minute drills in training camp. He finally won some.
Yeah. It was just odd. It was odd, and it worked, and we're all happy for it. But yeah, it was just so Justin,
right? Like a baby deer learning to walk for the first time.
Majestic,
awkward. We're happy for it.
Majestic,
right?
Well, actually, that throw was anything but majestic, but it worked, and that was the important thing.
The spirit of the event we were witnessing was majestic, but certainly the act itself wasn't. Again, like watching a baby deer learn to walk. The baby deer is awkward and clumsy, but being able to experience this moment in life, majestic.
There. I bet you weren't expecting to hear that analysis when you just decided, I'm going to download Norse Code here on Tuesday morning.
Look, if you have expectations going into these episodes, just like losing with Justin Jefferson on your fantasy team, that's on you, pal.
So let's talk about the rest of the receivers real quick, because this was a pretty good day for everybody to get the ball. Although Thielen didn't get a ton of touches, he was still out and was still very useful.
Yeah, so the way that O'Connell kind of described the role that players like Thielen and KJ Osborne is that they all kind of supplement this desire to make Justin Jefferson the focal point of the offense. It's like everybody exists to serve the interests of Justin Jefferson production, which I did not expect going into the season based off of what we watched in training camp or anything like that. In fact, I was trying to tamp down the Cooper Kupp role stuff, which if you break down exactly what Cooper Kupp did and exactly what Justin Jefferson did, they're different. But like the essence of them being like critical to the way the offense operates, that's true. So like for purposes of that, it's fine. From an X's and O's perspective, not really. But yeah, and the elements which they do that are to kind of clear out coverages and stuff like that, which like that's exactly what actually happened on that play that we were just talking about, is that Justin Jefferson splits these safeties in what is I guess supposed to be a cover 3 look, according to the person who knows cover 3 better than anyone in the history of the NFL, Richard Sherman. Because KJ Osborne took the cornerback away with his post route, right? And so that created an opportunity for Justin Jefferson to take it. And Adam Thielen was a big part of this. He was doing a really great job winning these corner routes or these post corner routes. And I was kind of upset because I thought, in the first half of the game especially, that he was doing a pretty good job getting up and downfield and not seeing targets. Now, he did throw a fit. Sometimes he does throw fits. That's just who he is. Probably because they were dominating the Packers, and so there's no reason to throw a fit about that. But it seemed like there was some like meat left on the bone, and it very much sounded like Kevin O'Connell recognized that right after the game. He was like, "There's a lot of things the offense could have done, but obviously you just want to celebrate wins and then investigate every game the same, whether or not it's a win or a loss, correct the things that need to be corrected." And it feels like that's one of those things. Thielen, I thought, did a better job than his statistics indicate. And some of that helps in terms of pulling coverage away from Jefferson. Some of that helps just in creating opportunities for Cousins when Jefferson, because of the design of the play, is just not going to be open, right? Like if you're running a post route into cover 1, right, you're probably not going to throw it to Jefferson unless he like really badly crosses the safety's face and leaves the corner behind. By design, that throw is not going to be there. So you want to throw it to Adam Thielen or something. So within those designs and within kind of that role, Thielen, I thought, did a really excellent job. And from a performance standpoint, should have walked away, quote unquote, should have walked away with more yards.
So this was a game. Well, actually, before we do that, is there any more that we can say about the way the offense is appears to be running this year? Because I don't feel like anybody who watched the preseason recognized this team.
Yeah, well, I mean, this team.
Well, it didn't play in the preseason, but
right,
yes.
Yeah, that's part of it. I'm concerned about sustainability for sure. I think that kind of pressure up the middle. I don't think Cousins is. Well, I don't think any quarterback can sustain a 7% pressure to sack ratio. Period. We've talked about this in the past. Not even like your Mahomes and stuff, right? Which Mahomes has an insane pressure to sack ratio given what he does. So that's not sustainable for anybody, much less somebody who has a much more difficult history of dealing with that. So that like this offense cannot produce at that rate if Garrett Bradbury and Ed Ingram continue to play like that. Like Ezra Cleveland was largely fine, but those two gave up, I think, 9 pressures between the two of them. Just like a brutally bad game from the interior from them. And so that needs to be resolved. Obviously, the running game needs to be that needs to pick up a little bit. We only saw a few instances where we really got to see Dalvin Cook's speed on display. And again, I really think that he's like turning another gear in terms of his speed this year that we haven't seen for a couple of years. And so I'm really excited to see what that happens or what that looks like against a defense that might allow some more runs up the interior. So that's my concern, is that I just don't know what's going to happen. Plus, if Irv Smith is not going to get, and it sounded like the way that they wanted to manage who gets what snaps is game dependent, but this is definitely a situation to monitor. Is Johnny Munt got like 40 snaps and Irv Smith got 19. And they were talking about how this is a kind of game management and how in some matchups you'll see a bunch more 2 running back sets. And so that's going to put, CJ Ham on the field, and other matchups you're going to have 2 tight end sets. That does imply, right, that Johnny Munt is tight end 1 and Irv Smith is tight end 2. He says not to read into the snap counts too much, but that is definitely a situation to monitor. If we don't have a matchup tight end to kind of handle, teams that don't handle tight ends very well, it's going to limit your offensive options. So those are kind of my thoughts on the offense based off of, you just get the 1 week.
So Aaron Rodgers went out there angry,
incensed.
Just, he didn't look like he was, to borrow a phrase, he didn't look like a kid out there.
I think his chi was all bottled up. It was closed. His chakras were closed.
Whatever it was, he was having some real issues out there with his offensive line and with his rookie wide receivers, in particular, the NDSU alum. And I was wondering if that was an earthquake or your gut laughing when that drop happened, because that was a 75-yard touchdown. That was guaranteed. There are few guarantees in this world, and that was a guaranteed touchdown that he dropped.
Yeah. So I watched that back because live I was like, there must have been some sort of mistake because it didn't feel like Patrick Peterson was burned, which, it's kind of a weird thing. Like, it doesn't feel like he got burned. It's just, his receiver's wide open. And then I watched it back, and it looked like he had stumbled at the same time Watson had put a move on him. And so in that sense, yeah, he did. And so, that's brutally bad, right? You get the sense that if he catches that and runs it in, aside from like the cosmic impossibility of an NDSU player living up to expectations, if he does that, that probably changes the flow of the game, not just because now you're dealing with a different score differential and everyone's calling plays a little bit differently as a result of that, but because like Rodgers maybe isn't like mad at the fact that he doesn't have any receivers with more than a year of experience besides like Randall Cobb in the shell of Sammy Watkins, or vice versa, whichever one you think is a shell.
He probably goes back to Watson at some point before the fourth quarter.
Right, exactly. Like it just feels like you probably trust that guy, and Aaron Rodgers is not a very forgiving quarterback based off of what we know about him. So, that would have changed a lot of things in a lot of ways, both in terms of like kind of the hard fact that, play calling changes when score differential changes and field position changes, but also kind of like the softer and more difficult to confirm fact that like Rodgers probably changes his approach to how those receivers are playing as a result of one of them being able to catch a big play and rip off a touchdown.
Just a ridiculous drop. And it's the old Bomani Jones thing. Like you got to throw it. You got to throw it up. He's open. You just can't catch a cold.
Right. Was that about Braylon Edwards? Right. Like He's open. Why is he out there? If you're not going to throw it to him, if he's open, you got to throw it.
Yep. He's the wide receiver with just one problem.
Yeah.
Can't catch the ball. Dude was out there. Dude was great as far as, that particular moment, except for catching the ball. This was an offense that had some real problems. Was this more the offensive line? Was this more the rookie receivers? Or was this a resurrected Minnesota defense that didn't give up points when you expected them to?
I don't know, right? Because we have to deal with the fact that the Packers have not been good in week 1 ever since LaFleur took over, right? So that's part of it, right? Second, I don't think we just saw them tested with like a good receiver core. So that's going to like play a big role. Plus they did get run on a lot. And it very much is in the style of the Fangio Staley defenses to invite the run in order to do a better job against the pass, which is just going to hurt you a little bit more. Now the running game got just dangerous enough where it's like, I don't know if that's actually true, but it still kind of worked out. So I don't know if we can declare that the defense has improved substantially. Certainly they didn't give up any points in the final 2 minutes of either half, which feels strange.
That's right? Like, that's our Super Bowl.
Yeah, right.
That's our second Super Bowl.
Yeah, we already won 2 Super Bowls this year. We've only played one game. Name another franchise that can do that. You can't. So I am still concerned about the defense. There's some individual players I'm a little bit worried about, which we can get into in a little bit more detail. But man, I really like how the defensive line looked. Like, yeah, they were up against backup tackles, a weird configuration because they kicked their guard out to tackle, replaced another tackle with it. Just like a bunch of small changes along that offensive line configuration. Plus, one of the players got a concussion on that offensive line partway through the game. But I still think that even knowing that, even kind of first of all, Zach Tom seems to be a starting quality player, so I don't want to take that away from the defensive lineman who played against him. But also, it just felt like they were doing a really great job, not just generating pressure, but kind of fitting where they needed to fit. I'm really a little bit more concerned about Jordan Hicks and his ability against the run, even though he led the team in tackles and led the team in stops, and kind of the tertiary stuff related to that. And also the backup defensive linemen I continue to be worried. I mean, James Lynch got blown off the ball a ton in a couple of snaps that he played. So there's still some concerns I have about that defense, but certainly we're kind of out of worst case scenario territory for right now until further notice. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like the old Vikings defenses from a top down, this is kind of how they line up standpoint, but it does remind you, especially the third down stuff they were doing, which is kind of fun.
Zadarius Smith looked like he was having a hell of a time out there.
Yeah. He was having the most fun of anybody on either team.
The moment of him jaw-jacking with Aaron Rodgers after Aaron Rodgers tried to throw a block on him. Like
that was really funny. I remember that someone in the press box was like, "Oh man, Aaron Rodgers must be mad." Which, first of all, I don't know how you can tell when he's not these days. But watching the replay on the video, first of all, I watched the replay on the screen. And it was like, well, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is blocking; he's got to expect this, so he can't be rightfully mad in any way. And then you watch it, and it's just they're just guys being dudes.
Just watching him get knocked down and then try to get up and then fall back down.
Never gonna keep me down.
Yeah, let's go with the Chumbawamba reference on that. How did the corners look out there? There were a couple of injuries, some stuff that we need to worry about.
Yeah, O'Connell gave us an update earlier today. So Andrew Booth suffered a quad injury. Apparently it's not that long term, and the only question is week 2, and he may or may not, be able to participate in week 2. So it sounds like, not a serious injury. We saw Caleb Evans in there for 5 snaps. But Cameron Dancer and Patrick Peterson played the majority of the game. So, yeah, I mean, it seems as if we don't really have to worry that much about injury. I thought Dancer played well. I thought Peterson, outside of that kind of first Packers play, seemed to have played well. Again, we're going to get more information when they go up against, starting quality receivers instead of, the injured remnants of what happens to be the Packers receiving core at the moment. But yeah, I think based off of what we saw, I mean, I think Caleb Evans made a big mistake, and when you only have like 5 snaps, like, okay, that's it, bye. It's not really fair to evaluate how he played, but Dantzler and Peterson otherwise played really well, again, outside of that first one.
So the other thing I want to mention is that Greg Joseph looked like a good kicker. He looked every bit of the hype from the preseason. Am I weird in thinking that we might not have much to worry about with him moving forward, or am I just tempting the gods?
You sound hesitant. Yeah, I mean, I guess Matt Daniels is right that he's set for a career year. I don't know how to answer your question because both can be true, right? Like he could have an amazing season, and then that could be the setup, right? Like we could be about to get punked.
The Vikings are not to be trusted and all, but like I kind of want to trust this dude.
No, James.
Is this? Oh
James,
no!
Look, James, he could make every kick but one this year, and the one he misses will be in like a 50-point blowout, so it won't matter. And we still wouldn't trust him heading into the playoffs. You know this. I know this. We need to put it out there so that we can hold ourselves accountable in December and January, where 2 of the games that they'll play will be played, and possibly the playoffs. Wow, I'm already too optimistic, right? But we need to put this out there now so that we're accountable 4 months from now to the Greg Joseph Pro Bowl season collapsing on us.
I'm ready to hurt again.
That's the problem. That's the curse of the fandom, right? Because like back when the Bills were bad and back when the Browns were bad, which I don't know. I don't know what to do with that team now.
I want to like that team so much because they have so many good, fun players on there.
Right. And I like their starting quarterback, Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, Jacoby Brissett's awesome. Go him.
Yeah, great. I hope he plays as the starting quarterback forever. Or until he's 40, whichever, right?
I'm not picky. One or the other.
Yeah, that sounds great. I would love to cheer for that team. Brissett seems like a great dude. That's all I have. Anyway, back when the Bills and the Browns were big problems, they didn't like pull you in. Like a little bit the Bills with the Ryan Fitzpatrick era, right? But they didn't like pull you in, and then like that's the problem with Vikings fandom. It's just cold Chargers, right? Where it's like, oh, I could buy into this team. They could definitely, this team has got it. This team could do it. They got like a new coach, or they got this new system, or they got this star player, and that's going to resolve the problems that they've had, and they're going to pull through. We've got the clutchest backup quarterback of all time, Case Keenum. He's going up against, who's this guy? Nick Foles, never heard of him. It's that's how they do it, right? That's the curse, is that you're ready to buy in again. Which, after they beat up on like a quarterbackless Eagles, I still don't trust Jalen Hurts. Maybe this is a bad slate just because you could trick Vikings fans. So, because right after the Packers win, it's what the Eagles, then the Lions, and then with the Bears, right? Am I wrong about that?
It's an odd mix here.
And then probably a bad Saints team. Like, I'll have to figure out what I think about that team too. But like that's a team that's gonna easily trick you. Like they have the high profile win against the hated rival that you always need to win, and then they've got some teams that are easy to stomp on. And then you're looking at like a 4-1 team, and you're like, I could buy into this Vikings team, and it's like they haven't played one good team, right? Because Packers Week 1 doesn't count. It's Packers Week 1. We've discovered this. So
yeah, it's Packers, and then it's Eagles, then it's Lions, and then it's Saints.
Yeah, okay.
And then it's the Bears.
And then it's the Bears. Okay.
And then Tuanon.
Oh God. Oh, this team's going to trick you so bad.
And then it's the Cardinals.
I don't know what to do with them either. That feels like a team that'll kick them in.
Then it's Carson Wentz. So like there's
my God.
There's a stretch of games here.
This is brutal. This is going to trick Vikings fans so bad.
I'm ready to hurt. By the time that the Vikings are playing the Bills November 13th, I don't know what to think. This is
Oh my God. What an awful setup. So you get tricked into this week 1 matchup against the Packers, and then you play no quarterback Eagles, no quarterback Lions, confusing Saints, no quarterback Bears, no quarterback Dolphins. Sorry, I'm just going to say it. Week 8 Cardinals is difficult because that is the fulcrum point for when Kyler Murray is good or bad. So we'll see if someone has like surreptitiously sent him a PS5 or whatever. And then quarterbackless Commanders, and then MVP candidate Josh Allen.
Here's the schedule. It goes.
I don't have to deal with Dak Prescott.
Bills, and then no Dak Prescott, probably. Patriots, potentially no quarterback.
Right.
Jets,
confirmed no quarterback.
Lions, no interesting game, but we'll see. Colts, Giants.
I don't know. They might. The Colts might have a quarter. Like that week 1 wasn't great, but the Colts might.
Yeah. And then Giants, Packers, and Bears. This is a very this schedule is going to trick you. This schedule is going to make you feel real good.
Oh no. Oh, they could sneak into oh no.
Arif, I'm telling you, I'm ready to hurt again.
We're doing the K-Fan bit. I can't see a loss in the schedule minus the Bills. I can't see a loss. Where's the loss minus the Bills? Where is it?
Is there anything else we should tie on here before we head over to the mailbag?
Don't believe the last 10 minutes of this podcast. That's all I have to say.
Well, let's head over to the mailbag. And Rasta is done trolling for 30 seconds in order to ask this question. What do you believe caused the offense to stall in the second half? It was interesting to watch this. This isn't from him. This is me. It was interesting to watch the second half because the Vikings were clearly in the lead and they didn't let up the gas, which was kind of a thing that you noticed and Zimmer was criticized for in previous years. This was a team that absolutely believed the game wasn't over until all zeros were on the board.
Yeah, it was interesting that like after the game, Adam Thielen was like, I've never been in an offense that just like kept on going, that kept on like trying to score points, right? I've never been in an offense this aggressive, I think is the way that he put it, which I don't know if that's necessarily a value judgment, but after a win certainly feels like like a shot. Right?
To all of those, to that Pro Bowl team he was on, absolutely. That guy should absolutely feel total disrespect.
Yeah, the Pro Bowl play caller, whoever the hell that was.
Yes, whoever was the coach that year should be absolutely furious at Thielen's characterization. And maybe Zimmer.
Well, I mean, the first drive, there were like 2 penalties or 1 penalty in the first drive. Like they ran the ball, didn't get anything. They got the offensive pass interference, and they just like threw a screen for no gain. So like that first drive was kind of its own thing just because of the penalty. After I'm trying to remember the next drive, was it okay? Dalvin Cook minus 1 yard, a delay of game penalty. Yeah, they need to clean it. They had what, 2 delay of game penalties in that game?
They did, yes.
Yeah, they need to clean that up. But like it was just like their mistakes were kind of localized to the 2 or 3 drives they had in the third quarter, because I thought the fourth quarter was all right. They had the deep pass to Thielen to finally get him involved. They had, a couple of runs set up really well. They had a deep pass right after that to Justin Jefferson. But yeah, it was really just the third quarter, and that's 2 drives, and both drives had penalties. Some of them had, like it's a penalty and a run for no gain in the same down series. And it's like, well, okay, well, that explains why the offense stalled. Is because, one play you played poorly, another play was a penalty, and now you're really in a position where it's really difficult to dig yourself out of it. Then in the fourth quarter, they complete a couple of 20-yard passes no one remembers. So I don't know that there's like an overarching reason other than, hey, just like stop getting delay of game penalties. That's weird.
It does seem odd getting a delay of game penalty in your own loud stadium. And watching the football games this week, it seemed like there were 2 home field advantages that existed. There was Seattle, who just wanted to see Russell Wilson get hurt, or at least knocked out. And
yeah, man, Seattle was like mad as hell.
They were out for blood. I enjoyed that. And then Minnesota, which absolutely wanted to see Aaron Rodgers get knocked around, and they got their wish.
Yep. They definitely got their wish. How many? So the Vikings combined for 4 sacks, but they also got.
I think they got 4 knockdowns, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, it looks like they have 5 here on the individual player list. I don't know if that means Rodgers was knocked down 5 times, or whether or not some of these are split between 2 players, because they only record half sacks and half tackles, but not like half hits. I guess I could just look it up in PFF if I'm really going to care that much about it. But like, they got a decent pressure rate. They got to knock Rodgers down a little bit. They didn't get any penalties on any, like, right. They didn't get any like rushing the passer, unnecessary roughness type penalties. Right. So I think that's pretty cool. Let's see. We got Rodgers under pressure on 28.9% of dropbacks. So just under a third. And he was hit as thrown 0 times, threw away 3 times. He took 11 pressures. It looks like a couple of hits. So they don't have the numbers right in front of me at the moment.
A couple of those sacks, 3 years ago, he would have thrown those balls away. It was weird watching him just turtle up instead of like tossing them away. He was really good at that. It was annoying how good he was at that.
Well, especially because at the beginning of his career, that's where he was too, right? Like the beginning of his career, he'd hold on to the ball, he wouldn't throw it away, he'd take the sack. And then as he's like hitting this like 2010, 2011, 2012 stride, he got really good at getting rid of the ball at the last moment right before the ball came in, whether it was a throwaway or it was a completion. And now it just seems like, that's where he played worse under pressure than I've seen from him in a long time. He didn't throw he threw like 1 pick. That was the Harrison Phillips pressure for the Harrison Smith pick. But he didn't throw that many bad balls under pressure. He just made bad decisions, right? Like, that was very unusual.
He didn't have a wide receiver that could bail him out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about it with Justice, right? It was like, hey, when Rodgers has been successful, there's always been some kind of dominant receiver to kind of help enable that, right? Like, Rodgers is obviously always driving the ship in those circumstances, but like, he's had a dominant receiver and now he doesn't. And, maybe it's a week 1 thing. Maybe, he doesn't have, the guy to always throw the insane back shoulders to this year. So I guess we'll see.
Or at least not yet, anyway. Jordan asks, for a Reef's overreaction corner, how many receiving yards will the third member of the triple threat, Johnny Munt, of course, get this season?
Strong Hands Munt. I can't get over that nickname, Strong Hands Munt. All right, so let's see. We got Johnny Munt, 17 yards, 3 receptions, which is technically that is 4th to Dalvin Cook's 3 receptions, 18 yards, and Adam Thielen's 3 receptions for 36 yards. It's so weird how nobody else could get anything going. I guess we could project him out to what's 17 squared. Let's assume he's healthy the whole time. 289 yards. The Vikings' third receiver in this offense is going to get under 300 yards. Also, Jefferson will get 3,000 yards.
Yeah, I'm fair. I'm actually fine with that other one. Like, no one's ever had a 2,000-yard season. Well, I'm going to get 3. Cody asks, although he led the Vikings defense with 14 total tackles, it seemed like Jordan Hicks struggled when it came to both rush defense and coverage. Do you think it's reasonable to be concerned about Hicks's play, or do you think his struggles were due to learning the new scheme?
I think it's reasonable to be concerned, especially because when the Packers were successful in offense, they were finding ways to get to the perimeter, right? Whether that was, a toss or some kind of sweep to the outside on a running play, whether it was thrown to the flats. That was an area where the Packers were doing really well. And it was kind of easy to notice during the game, which is why I was confused with some of the decisions they made middle to late game, running up the middle in critical situations, right? Because they were not doing a very good job there, which I think gives us context for how that run game was going, right? Like Zadarius Smith was not setting the edge very well. He was getting good pressure, but he was not setting the edge very well. Danielle Hunter even got collapsed on a couple of times in the run game to the outside. And then you've got, Hicks being kind of late to get there. Like, I thought Kendricks was fine. Hicks was kind of late a lot of times getting to the outside, which also showed up in coverage. I think a couple of those perimeter throws were Hicks's assignment. And so those are definitely like big question marks I have. on the Minnesota Football Party, I forget who was it. Was it Sam Ekstrom? I think was like, "Hey, we'll see Brian Asamoah start by the end of the year because of this." I don't know because I think Asamoah just like clearly is like behind everybody else when it comes to like learning his responsibilities as a linebacker in this defense. And so it might take a long time to see him, but like he certainly has much more sideline capability right now than Jordan Hicks does, which is like weird because the reason I like Jordan Hicks coming out of college when the Eagles drafted him, I want to say from Texas, he had an insane combine. He had incredible athleticism, but now watching him, 8-9 years later, like he hasn't retained it in the same way that somebody like Eric Kendricks has, right? So, yeah, I'm concerned. I don't know how long term those concerns are, but they feel like they're a bit more persistent. But I guess we'll see because the Eagles have like a quarterback who can run the ball, and that creates all kinds of options on the perimeter. So we'll see if that ends up being a bigger concern.
Mikhail Skolichov.
Oh my God. Incredible name.
Asks, when are we going to admit Bynum is actually really good and isn't giving up his starting spot?
I mean, like, I've always been on that train. I don't know when other Vikings fans are going to admit it. I thought he played really well last year. I thought, like, if you play so well as a fifth-round rookie when you're playing in place with somebody that Mike Zimmer just like loves, right? Like Xavier Woods is smart. He like can pick up on everything. He communicates extraordinarily well. He knew exactly everything about the defense on like day one. And Mike Zimmer was like, this Cameron Bynum kid is so good. I gotta start putting 3 safeties on the field just to get him on the field, right? Like when you're that good, like that's like a sign, right? And so that's part of it. But also like, again, this is a question kind of asked on the football party. Like at some point, if we don't see Lewis Cine on the field in 3 safety sets in the same way that Bynum was, we should begin asking questions. I don't know when that point is. It's certainly not, week 1 where he was too injured to even be active, right? Like he re-aggravated a knee issue that we saw in practices a week ago. But at some point when he's active and healthy and available, which it sounds like he will be for the Eagles game, and we don't see him on the field more than like 4 or 5 snaps a game on defense, then like maybe 5 games, 7 games down, we could ask, not is Cameron Bynum so good that he can hold off Lewis Cine? Is Lewis Cine good enough to even legitimately challenge for the job? But yeah, I think Bynum played really well, right, in this game. And hopefully people can kind of begin to see that this is like genuine, that like Bynum just like has the capability to be a high quality starting safety. And then you begin to ask the question what to do with Lewis Cine.
Luke Braun is asking a question here.
Oh, geez.
Asks, now that Kirk Cousins has won 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls, where does he rank in terms of such dynastic quarterbacks?
Incredible. Okay, this is a rare good Luke Braun question. Yeah, I mean, he has more Super Bowl wins than Aaron Rodgers. He's more Super Bowl wins than Peyton Manning, than Eli Manning, than Drew Brees. Like, he's got a lot of rings right now. And, untold, he's got another opportunity to win a Super Bowl this year, right? So, like, untold rings in his future. So, we're still kind of in the middle because he didn't really have a bunch of opportunities to win rings in Washington, right? Because he wasn't playing for the Vikings against the Packers. But, he's got a lot of opportunity to pass like Joe Montana and Tom Brady even, right? If he just plays a couple more years for the Vikings. Because it's 2 opportunities to get a ring a year. Plus, I guess there's a third opportunity in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say, plus the actual literal Super Bowl. But
I don't know what you're talking about, James. They're all Super Bowls to me.
They're all Super Bowls to Arif. Noah asks, is Greg Joseph the Kirk Cousins of kickers? In that, his stats look good, but he still won't be trusted in big spots. He only missed 5 field goals and 4 extra points last year, yet I feel no confidence when he lines up for a kick, especially in a clutch situation.
Yeah, I can't knock this one, actually. Like, this is just a good take. Until Greg Joseph kind of nails a couple of game winners in high profile situations, which he has nailed game winners, but like what 3-year kicker hasn't, if we count his first year as his first year. But like, until he does it at a rate kind of expected of kickers, we can't really remove him from the Kirk Cousins pedestal because man, is he stuffing the stat box right now.
Jack asks, how sustainable is the kind of game Justin Jefferson had?
What, do you think he's going to receive for 3,000 yards this year, Jack?
I mean, I think so, but that's...
yeah. I mean, like, a high level of performance is obviously sustainable. We've seen that. But yeah, I think we can begin to have a conversation. If he posts 2 more 100-plus yard games in the next 2 games, right? If he continue, like, what was the Adam Thielen pace for a while, right? If he keeps doing that for just even 3 more games, we can have a conversation about 2,000 yards. But I mean, that game is not sustainable. The way the Packers played up was criminal. No other team's going to do that.
That was so dumb. I loved every minute of it, but it looked like somebody should have been forced to walk home after that.
Right. Yeah. Which, by the way, just I know Justice doesn't listen to the show except when he's forced to, i.e. when he's on. But hey, he kept on talking about Matt LaFleur's winning percentage. Kevin O'Connell's a better win percentage than Matt LaFleur. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, the sample size is so much smaller, but if we ignore that for just a moment...
Justice was talking about it from game 1, so we're going to do it too.
Okay, well, then fine. Why the hell not? And clearly, Kevin O'Connell is better in week 1 than Matt LaFleur.
Yeah. Bill Belichick could win every single game for the rest of his career, and he still would not catch up to Kevin O'Connell's winning percentage right now. It's just true.
This is science.
Yeah.
Tommy Gunn asks, okay, not trying to steal Purple Buckeyes call-in bit and overreact one game, but did the run game seem anemic unless the run lane was like immaculate? Madison broke tackles or Cook stretched it to the sidelines before cutting it up. Help a guy lacking NFL Plus make sense of it all. Boy, the NFL Plus actually sounds more like a support group than what it is. This is Cook got a very quiet 90 yards out of this.
Yeah, right. We were all looking at the box score after the game in the press box, and we're like, "Did he really get 90 yards? Are we sure about that one?" So like, it was weird because I think primarily at the beginning of the game, it was like there was just not very much there for him. But he ended up with 4.5 yards per attempt, just like Alexander Madison. He ended up with 3.6 yards after contact per attempt. So 72 total yards after contact. He forced 6 missed tackles. No, I don't think I was too... I don't think that it's easy to say that this like one game tells us about the state of the Vikings run blocking or ability to run the ball. The Packers have just been pretty good against Dalvin Cook and rushing the ball the past 2 years, right? So I think it's just kind of the way that they play him and the way that Kenny Clark matches up to somebody like Garrett Bradbury. That I don't think will necessarily replicate itself. Now, mind you, they're going up against 2 really good run defense fronts in the Eagles, who might have the deepest defensive line in the league, and the Lions, who are the only other really competitor to that. They're 1 and 2 in some order when it comes to defensive line depth, and especially when it comes to defending the run, assuming like Jordan Davis is who we think he is. So like, it'll be tough. And I think after 3 games, we'll keep asking these questions like, hey, the run game doesn't look all that good. And it might just be because of the opponents that they played.
Next question is going to be from Pat, who asks, Jordan Love spiking the football with a second left should have warranted an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Does the league need to crack down on backup quarterbacks wasting our precious time on this earth?
No, because Jordan Love getting garbage time stats, I that could only be good for Vikings fans, right? Because either, right, like the Packers tricked themselves into trusting this guy, or the Packers find some way to attempt to trade for this guy, and they get like weird trade, like they get like back a bad receiver or something. I think that like getting a bad team to give up stuff, like I think that would probably hurt the Packers more than help them, unless it's just picks. So I think that, you know, racking up the garbage time stats is going to convince Packers fans that he's good. And that to me is funny. Might convince the Packers that he's good. That to me is also funny. And also just create some opportunities for like, you know, picks and sacks and stuff like that for the defense. So mostly it's good.
What I enjoy is any opportunity to be reminded on national TV that Jordan Love is the backup quarterback in Green Bay. Like any chance you get an opportunity to be reminded of that sparks joy.
Yeah.
That's
so funny.
That's a wonderful thing. Next question is going to be Two of my favorite questions in a row here. Sean asks, who treated their receivers worse, Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning in that SNL skit?
So we're going to link the SNL sketch in the show notes if you haven't seen it. It's like from 2013. It's a United Way sketch.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, and I don't want to give it away if you haven't seen it. But the answer is technically Peyton Manning, because not only is that probably illegal, the receivers in that sketch deserve it quite a bit less. So I'm gonna say Peyton Manning, but only because of the way we treat these two circumstances in our moral code. But if Aaron Rodgers could do what Peyton Manning did in that sketch, he would.
Oh, absolutely. That NDSU receiver would totally be locked in the porta potty.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Zen Cupid asks, one of the things I noticed was how often it appeared that the defensive line shuffled around. Is it as ambiguous as it seemed on TV, or does each lineman have a more defined role within the scheme?
I think it's ambiguous to us, but not to them, if that makes sense. So like, I think that within each framework, right, within each play, within each front, within each kind of rush responsibility, it's very clear what each lineman is expected to do, and it's very clear how they should train in the week up ahead for what they're going to do, right? Because a defensive end in this scheme is primarily going to be attacking like the outside shoulder of the guard or the inside shoulder of the tackle, and will develop a skill set that'll let them do that. But occasionally that skill set will allow them to be on the outside shoulder of attack, like one of Dalvin Tomlinson's pressures, which actually, I don't think PFF counted this as a pressure, because I think they had Dalvin Tomlinson getting all of his pressures in the fourth quarter. And I would argue that actually this one in the first quarter should have counted too. But one of his pressures was him lined up as a 4-3 defensive end on the outside shoulder of the tackle, bull rushing the tackle, right? Which is not a thing that like you see very often, right? But it fits kind of what his role is. And so I think that for them, it's pretty defined in what's expected of them, how they should train, what kind of skill set that they should kind of emphasize. But for opposing teams, it can be really tough because of how often these linemen seem to be moving around. So I think we're going to continue to see these defensive linemen shuffled around. Like we saw Dalvin Tomlinson, I think, lined up at the nose, at the outside shoulder of the guard, the inside shoulder of the tackle, the outside shoulder of the tackle, lined up head up over each of these guys. So, we saw Harrison Phillips move around a little bit. We saw even obviously like Zarius Smith, that his job is to move around. So we're going to see a lot of that, but I don't think it like ambiguous is necessarily the right word when it comes to the way that the team prepares for it.
Just as a side note, I wanted to, since you had mentioned the bowling over part, one of my favorite moments of the entire game was watching A.J. Dillon attempt to set a block and immediately just be railed down. Just had his lunch eaten in front of him on the way to that real nasty sack on Aaron Rodgers. Just the way that...
that was incredible.
The way that they showed it on TV as well, it just looked like A.J. Dillon knew in that immediate moment, like everything stopped for him, and he looked up and just saw the wall of humanity coming toward him, just like, really? This is... This is it? It's absolutely amazing. That was one of my favorite parts. I was just laughing so hard at that moment. I didn't even notice that Favre got sacked and that he fumbled. I was too busy laughing at A.J. Dillon getting his lunch eaten.
It was a phenomenal play from like that perspective for so many reasons. It was incredible.
So good. Stevie asks, why don't we see stats like yards per touch or adjusted net yards per passing attempt, but based on median results or even mode?
So again, not to give Justice too much credit. In fact, I don't think he's done it yet, so we'll see. But he does do a adjusted net yards over average for every week, and that's a value calculation, so it's a total, not per attempt. But I don't think that this is a bad idea to just say this quarterback was plus 1.3 NEA, this quarterback was minus 2.5 NEA. NEA is adjusted net yards per attempt. And that tells you kind of how much above or below the baseline they were. I think that that's a good idea. I think the reason we don't see it is because it's like extra work, and also you kind of have to learn the frame of reference again. Like when I was first learning a lot of these statistics, like especially adjusted net yards per attempt or expected points per play or whatever, it took a while for me to look at one statistic and kind of understand, how good it is or how bad it is that player performed it. And while you'll get a sense that one player is doing better than average or worse than average by taking a look at 0.5 NEA or something like that, without knowing NEA already, you don't have an understanding of whether or not that's really good or kind of good or within the margin of error, and basically you could just call them average. Like half in adjusted net yards per attempt is pretty good, I think, right? Over average. 3 is great, and for an individual game, 7 plus 7 is phenomenal, right? But if you don't have an understanding of what it is, then it doesn't really mean anything either way. So you have to relearn anyway. So I think that's the second reason. I think the first thing is just a lot of work. We're not used to doing it in football generally. In fact, people still will talk about volume stats. It's taken a lot to kind of train media to talk about it in terms of per attempt. And now there's a whole new set of stats like EPA that they have to kind of get their brain wrapped around again. And so having it over or under is difficult. Luckily, EPA is based on median results. I'd say not mode because if you do it so mode is the most common number that appears in a data set. If you do it based off of mode per play, you'll end up with a bunch of, for runs, it's 4 for everybody. It's not a useful number. And so, and for passing attempts, it's probably 6 when the average is 7, because the explosive plays are a big part of how that average changes and how we adjust for it. So mode's just not a good idea in general. But based off of median results, I think is okay, but you'd have to retrain anyway.
Jay Thomas asks the following: what was the best of the food in the press box on Sunday?
So the best were the s'mores, which are always fantastic. They have these homemade, I shouldn't say homemade, gourmet marshmallows that are not generally the store-bought marshmallows. They're incredible. You can put whatever kind of chocolate, because they've got Ghirardelli chocolate, they've got Reese's peanut butter cups, and they've got Hershey's. And sometimes I'll experiment with the different Ghirardellis, the different Reese's, but most of the time I just get a Hershey's, because I think that even though Hershey's is the quote unquote the worst chocolate of all of that, it the flavor combination is just designed for Hershey's, right? That's delicious. I love it. That was great. But that's there every so often. This week it was not as good as it has been in the past. I'd say probably the meatball sub was pretty good. And then everything after that was kind of whatever. You had a cream sauce tortellini that was kind of fine. You had a really overcooked chicken breast that was kind of disappointing. And then the brats, because they always try to do some sort of it's thematic to their opponent, and the brats were just not as good as brats should be. It was disappointing because they have to. It's steamed basically inside one of the what are they called, chafing dishes, where you have to. They've got the fire underneath to keep it warm, and it just gets overcooked over time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was it was mostly fine, but the s'mores, always, were delicious.
Let's go to Roro, who asks, can the Vikings be trusted? Also, is the live show ticketed or reserved? No, it is not ticketed. Can the Vikings be trusted? Absolutely not. But I don't care. I'm in on this again, which
that's how it happens.
I'm ready for the Week 11 meltdown, as should you all be, based on last year. Jay Stite asks, after yesterday's performances, pick a quarterback: Carson Wentz or Trey Lance?
Well, first of all, for this question to work, you have to have a quarterback in there. I see a tight end and a safety. Second, if I was going to pick either of those players to play a quarterback based off of this week's performances, you have to choose Carson Wentz, right? Trey Lance looked like Garbo.
What I enjoyed the most about the Trey Lance game, and I don't remember if this was said online, if this was said on TV, or if this was said in print, but the phrase came up: the Chicago Bears won because they forced Trey Lance to be a quarterback. And of all takes that I expected to hear out of your mouth in like national media, that was the one that stuck.
That's good. That's good. I like that.
I was like, boy, that's that's Arif, you know, that's Norse code blending into other forms of life, isn't it? All right. Nolan Kaler asks, for Arif's fashion corner, if you had to describe, quote, Kirkcore to someone who had only a vague notion of who Kirk Cousins is, what would you tell them?
Oh boy. Man. Cole's business casual.
As somebody who rocks the dad outfits from time to time, even I thought that wearing a shirt that was the same color as your skin was not great. Not a great look.
As soon as he walked into the press area, that was the first thing I noticed, is that the shirt was the same color as his skin. It's just not going to work out for you. And after seeing all the memes on Vikings Twitter, no, it did not. Kirk has had better dressed pressers before. Like, it's like he's never been like a Justin Jefferson or a Stephon Diggs, right? And Adam Thielen always kind of like has something that he's going for, and it works, right? He's like, he shows up in like chains and a Twins jersey, like that look works for him, right? But like Kirk is just like, man, who are you picking up from soccer practice, man? This is wild.
Yeah, he does have to pick up his kids after this. Yeah. I think it was Dana Wessel had put on Twitter a picture of that and just said, this guy looks like he just has a load of Kohl's bucks.
See, this is what I mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's
Kohl's business casual. Yeah,
yep, that's something right there. Also from Nolan Kaler, from North Code, after a dominant victory clearly inspired by their brothers in Bud, the blue and gold, what other CFL secrets will the purple and gold take into their match with the Eagles?
12 players on the field.
See, the last time they did that, it went poorly, but this is a new regime.
Yeah, you always got to be willing to take risks.
Yeah. All20Q asks, for Arif's corner, does Jair Alexander's comments about not being afraid of Justin Jefferson and that he wanted to be manned up on him say more about resentment toward Rasul Eric Stokes or Joe Barry?
I think probably Joe Barry, but like doing that limits kind of the things that you can do defensively, right? Like it makes it pretty difficult to design a scheme in the Fangio Staley style. If you're always going to man up, it limits your coverages. Which, like, you know, when the Jets did it with Darrelle Revis, like they found a way to make it work, right? Like it wasn't like, you know, but it does like limit kind of the types of zones you can employ, the types of blitzes you can work off of those zones. So I understand. But I do think that, you know, when Matt LaFleur kind of said that, I do think that he is overstating the difficulty of designing a complex defense when you do have someone shadowing around. First of all, Zimmer did do it for most of his career. But second, like, you can have a cornerback shadow someone and continue to run zone defenses. Like we've seen it happen. So that one was weird. I'm going to say it was a resentment towards Joe Barry.
Let's go to Brown's Massage Therapist Union, who asks, for Arif's movie spoiler corner, James was insistent that this Wade Miller of Minneapolis exists. Do we think this is more of a Memento situation where James made up his savior, or Usual Suspects Kaiser Soze situation where James is being set up by a hidden mastermind?
Well, yeah, definitely super spoilers. Holy crap. I guess, you know, the movies are old enough, but like, I think James is being set up. I don't think James is clever enough to trick himself.
I don't know whether to be insulted or not here, but I mean, considering that last fall we had the what's in the box situation, and now there's a question of Usual Suspects or Memento, I'm just wondering when we go to like Inception, or we go to like, when is my totem gonna like fall? can we go deeper than this? Can we go deeper than this?
You can always go deeper when you've got like a Fincher movie as your model, right?
Mm-hmm. Fight Club's up next. Like, it's
Right.
going to turn out that that Wade Miller is actually my alter ego, and that I'm just driving to Minneapolis to an apartment that I've been renting for 6 months, and I've subscribed to the Patreon for 6 months for. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh no.
This is all going to end with Pixies music, so I guess I can't be too upset. Logan asks, we're expecting our second child in late January, early February. We're narrowing down names. Which first/middle names should I submit? James Arif or Arif James?
All right. So from an aesthetic standpoint, just from hearing the names read out, I think Arif James makes more sense, right? Just the way that it sounds. But that's going to be weird if you've got a white kid. I don't know if you do. Your name's Logan, so I'm just going to assume that there's a pretty decent chance of that. So if you want the kid's name to kind of match the historical references to particular ethnicities, and also so that people like don't get always confused when like your kid's name is called in class, go James Arif. But like I think Arif James sounds better.
Listen, I really am the last person anyone should ask about baby names. I'm done giving opinions on such things.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that James Arif probably works better in the context, but you know what? Punish your child. Let's just go Arif James, and let's just put that kid right in therapy to start.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wait, what are you saying about me?
I'm not saying you're in therapy. I'm just saying we put the kid in it.
Sure.
Second, should I be concerned about the due date of my second child, in that it will interfere with the inevitable Vikings Super Bowl run? Listen, you've had your first child. You know what to expect as far as the first day is concerned with the child. It's a big blur. There's a lot of downtime, however, with kid sleeping, kid eating, and all that. So I don't know. I was in the hospital with my son and watched the Vikings make a playoff run. It was my son's first playoff game. Well, it was a Week 16 game against the Packers, if I remember correctly. Yeah, because that was the Adrian Peterson almost broke the record, except Leslie Frazier's an idiot.
Right.
Yeah, that. So, I mean, I was able to do it. I don't think that I'm that special of a human being. I think that you should be able to figure it out too. But yeah, go for it. And I was also dating. I was also engaged to a Packers fan at the time. So like, we made it work. You should be able to figure something out. Micah asks for Arif Hassan's theology corner, and I think this got corrected at one point. An old age Socratic dilemma. Is our Super Bowl victory over the Packers just and good because Ben DiNucci willed it? Or did Ben DiNucci will it because it is just and good?
All right, so I am not familiar with the apparent theological or philosophical underpinnings behind the argument. This ended up getting debated out in my mentions, and I refused to learn from it. And so, for me, I guess if it's just and good because Ben DiNucci willed it, that means it does not contain an inherent property of justness or goodness, except insofar as the divine being Ben DiNucci wills it so. So if Ben DiNucci had willed something else, it would not have been just and good. It does not contain that inherent property. That's my understanding of this question, right? Then the other way is Ben DiNucci wills it because it is just and good. It's because Ben DiNucci as a divine being is inherently attempting to produce something that will be just and good. And so it does have a property in and of itself that is both just and good. And then the question is, can we have justness and goodness without Ben DiNucci to provide us with kind of an ethical framework, right? And so can ethics exist? Can goodness exist? Can justice exist absent Ben DiNucci is a question, which is kind of like a heretical question, right? Because Ben DiNucci always exists. Like we can't deny Ben DiNucci. but can a property have justness and goodness independent of the divine being Ben DiNucci? And if so, would it be just and good if it was not willed into being, right? And I'm going to argue that there is something inherent in beating the Packers that is good and just, in part because Justice Mosqueda is a Packers fan. And so seeing him suffer, it feels like that has like a self-evident inherent quality to it. And so because of that, that's the reason Ben DiNucci willed for the Vikings to beat the Packers. And so I'm going to say that it's the second thing. And I'm confident I'm going to have an ethical philosopher in my mentions after this answer.
Probably, yes.
Right.
I just want to point out that Ben DiNucci was released, and then what happens to Dak Prescott?
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a great point. It's an unassailable point.
You shouldn't have done that.
Shouldn't have done it.
Nope, and yet you did. Kenneth Allen asks, for James's irresponsible speculation corner, now this is a corner we need to come back to. Now here's a corner that we need to come back to. How did Chris Collinsworth lose his voice before Sunday Night Football?
This is all you because I watched the game on silent because I was working.
Oh, so you missed out on the fact that he sounded like he had a stoma.
I mean, I heard a lot of people.
About it,
I saw a lot of people say it on Twitter. I heard about it, but I didn't actually hear him.
It was rough. He sounded like the woman from that was like the in Beetlejuice. Sounded like the woman who was like working as the afterlife assistant. Like just rough. Like I realize it's hard to have like a stunt voice or a stunt caster ready for this.
Right.
But dude was getting some serious allergy stuff. And like I realized that over a period of time, like even my voice, even like a few minutes ago, I was like, oh, my throat is sounding a little bit worn. I'm not sounding as fresh as I did. I'm gonna pop a cop drop, and it'll get me through for the rest of the show. Like you do little things to help, and I'm sure he has been, but he was long past the point of any sort of return there. He started off the game, and people were wondering like, did Tirico kick him in the throat or something? Like, what happened? So as for what was the cause of his voice, he could have gotten into a fight with a biker before the game. He could have decided to switch from Camel Lights to American Spirits.
Right.
That would do it. American Spirits are supposed to be natural and instead are incredibly harsh. Maybe this is just something as easy as he was a little under the weather from, let's see, what's something obscure? Maybe he had croup. You never hear about older men having croup. You only hear about children having croup. Maybe he was suffering from that. Maybe he was at a Lady Gaga show the night before and screamed his heart out, and now he has nothing.
I'm going to say that last one is the most likely.
Yeah, so there's options. Damian Barrett asks, which royal from popular culture would you like to see King Charles model himself after? A Game of Thrones Mad King seems apt for 2022 Britain, but it might have some non-welcome consequences for the Vikings London game.
I'm going to go with the Ice King from Adventure Time. Unquestionably evil enough for people to wonder whether or not it's worth keeping the institution of monarchy, but also like ultimately pretty easy to prevent the kind of harm that he would bring, right? Him and his sausage fingers attempting to kind of freeze the world while some child beats him. That sounds like the ideal scenario.
I wonder what Britain would be like if the king from Shrek or the prince from Shrek is what Prince Charles would become. I think that could be. I think that could be interesting or just wrong. And either way, I'm here for it. It'd be hard to mess up the country anymore.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Don from Ohio asks, where does Justice admitting Arif was right rank on Arif's greatest moments of his life?
It was a pretty great moment this week, but I'm not going to let Justice define my life That's not happening. But it was funny.
It was entertaining listening back to the interview. And apologies that immediately after the Justice interview, on the initial batch for the podcast, the audio went all funky. Justice episodes, even though this was my mistake, I'm going to blame Justice for it, and I feel like I'm right.
And you're right. Yeah. You'd be right, too.
There's
an essence that he brings to all these episodes that create these mistakes.
It's odd when a Justice episode goes right, and this was not one of them. So apologies for the tech issues. That though they were fixed, it is something that you can go back to listen to if you'd like. The mailbag was fantastic, but yeah, so it was an odd moment there for the Justice interview. But you're absolutely right. You cannot let Justice be that far in your head. You'd be giving him too much power to say that this was one of the best moments of your life.
Yeah, I can't let Justice be responsible for a life moment one way or the other.
No. Good or bad. Right. Also, finally, for James and Arif's charcoal can kill corner. That's a new corner. Yesterday, a charcoal grill destroyed multiple vehicles in the Miami Dolphins parking lot, which could have caused many death and injuries.
You know, for a lot of people, sometimes when you send in a question, like there might be a typo or there might be a subject verb disagreement. Maybe like you started typing one question and then you went back and you changed it, and we'll like try to correct it for you. But Don is slandering us on a consistent basis, and in no way are we going to make him look better. And often, of course, we will make him look worse because he is a liar who deserves to have his, public presence framed correctly. And so we need to move him away from how he chooses to present himself, and into kind of the spiritual truth of his bad tweets.
The spiritual truth.
Yeah.
It's a scientific facts. Wood pellets could not cause this type of damage.
Oof, rough.
Will James finally admit charcoal is a terrible source of heat, not only for cooking, but for human life and cars?
First of all, no one died in that parking lot. Let's get that out of the way.
No one died in the parking lot. It could have been bad if not for the fact that everyone was in the stadium. But it was a game and everyone was in the stadium. This was a situation where it looks like the grill was not properly put out. Ended up getting kicked under a car. And Bob's your uncle. There it is. It cooked one car, and one car turned into another car. And vehicle fires are just like a magical thing anyway.
Yeah.
So you were kind of stuck there. The fun thing is listening to like there was like an Action News that was on the scene, and the description from the person they interviewed was that it looked like smoke and then it turned into fire. And we were just like, hey, there's a car on fire over there. It's like, great. That is fantastic eyewitness news stuff. Will I finally admit that charcoal is a terrible source of heat? No. Of course.
Look, if you leave a wood pellet fire unattended, it will also do damage.
Well, you wouldn't have a wood fire thing out there because you'd need a generator with it. Because as we've already established, a wood pellet grill is an outdoor oven. So
that's true. Yeah.
And you wouldn't probably disassemble that in such a way that you would put it under a vehicle anyway. So like, it wouldn't. There's a number of things here that don't end up working. And I've even said to Don, if he is willing to buy me a wood pellet grill, I'm willing to use it for a full year and report back on it. But he has in no way done anything to lead to that point. So I'm willing to concede the point and even try it, but he wants nothing to do with it. Giving him an opportunity to be right.
Yeah, and he's turning it down. I think it's because he knows.
He's turning it down because he's a coward who doesn't proofread his questions. So, with that finished, Arif, what do you have to plug?
Well, I have an exciting announcement, but I'm going to keep that for maybe the next episode, maybe next week. I don't know. In the meantime, I'm going to have a piece on the Vikings pass rush plan, how they were able to get so much pressure on Aaron Rodgers and specifically turn those pressures into sacks. That'll be up soon. And then, of course, I'm going to have a piece previewing the Eagles game later this week.
So that is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We'll be back later this week with a preview of the Eagles game. So for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember that the Vikings are not to be trusted. And we will be back later this week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog, at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of The Athletic, and he can be found at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a few different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merchandise. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.